This is a digital SAT reading and writing practice test, 10 questions. The topic is information and ideas. And this is an advanced level test, so this is as hard as it gets. Let's take a look. Researchers Suchitra Rajendran and Maximilian Popfinger modeled varying levels of passenger redistribution from short-haul flights. That would be flights of 50 to 210 minutes from takeoff to landing, to high-speed rail trips. Planes travel faster than trains, but air travel typically requires 3 hours of lead time for security, baggage handling, boarding. The rail travel doesn't. Yeah, it's the travel overhead that kills you. So short-haul routes take similar amounts of time by air and by rail. However, the model suggests that as rail passenger volumes approach current capacity limits, long lead times emerge. Therefore, for rail to remain a viable alternative to short-haul flights, okay, so they're going to have to figure out a way to reduce the overhead, possibly by offering more routes, more rail routes, but let's see what the options are. Rail systems should offer fewer long-haul routes. No, that's like the opposite of what they should do. Rail systems may need to schedule additional trains for these routes. Yeah, that makes sense. Security, baggage handling, boarding for airlines may need to be implemented for rail. That doesn't make sense. Passengers who travel by rail will just need to they'll just need to deal with it. I think scheduling additional routes is probably the best way to go there. Correlations between congestion ratings and features of the crowd in raters' immediate vicinity. Not sure what that means. Let's go ahead and read it. Researcher Giolu Gia and colleagues monitored individuals' velocity and the surrounding crowd density as a group of study participants walked through a space and navigated around an obstacle. Participants rated how congested it seemed before the obstacle, after the obstacle, and overall, and the researchers correlated those ratings with velocity and density. Correlations range from -1 to 1, with greater distance from 0 indicating greater strength. Researchers concluded that the correlations with velocity are stronger than those with density. In other words, stronger meaning further from 0, which choice best describes data that supports the researcher's conclusion. Okay, well, now that we understand it, we can look at it and say that velocity, as compared to density, is farther from 0, both, before the obstacle, after the obstacle, and overall. So we need an answer to something like that. The correlation between congestion ratings before the obstacle and density is further from 0 than the correlation. I don't even know what that means. The correlation between congestion ratings before the obstacle and velocity is further from 0. I don't know what that means either. For each of the 3 ratings, the correlation with velocity is negative, while the correlation with density is positive. Yeah, that's I mean, that's like by definition, but it doesn't say anything about the relative strength. For each of the 3 ratings, this is D. Correlations with velocity are further from 0 than corresponding correlations with density. That's exactly what we're looking for, D. Neural networks are computer models intended to reflect the organization of human brains and are often used in studies of brain function. According to an analysis of 11,000 such networks, Ryland Schaefer and colleagues advised caution when drawing conclusions about brains from observations of neural networks. They found that when attempting to mimic grid cells, which are brain cells used in navigation, while 90% of the networks could accomplish navigation-related tasks, only about 10% of those exhibited any behaviors similar to those of grid cells. But even this approximation of grid cell activity has less to do with similarity between the neural networks and biological brains than it does with the rules programmed into the networks. All right, what's the question? Which finding, if true, would most directly support the claim in the underlined sentence? Well, I'm thinking it's going to be something like, neural networks can accomplish navigation tasks, but they don't do it in the same way that human brains do. So let's see what we got here. The rules that allow for networks to exhibit behaviors like those of grid cells have no equivalent in the function of biological brains. That sounds pretty good. That, we're not looking at networks to, accomplish the same tasks in exactly the same way as human brains. We're not looking for them to mimic the function of human brains. If they can accomplish the same tasks in a different way, yeah, maybe we're okay with that. All right. B, the networks that do not exhibit behaviors like those of grid cells were nonetheless programmed with rules that had proven useful in earlier neural network studies. No, there was nothing about earlier studies. Once a neural network is programmed, it is trained on certain tasks to see if it can independently. There's nothing about this in the passage. Neural networks can often accomplish tasks that biological brains do, but they are typically programmed with rules to model multiple types of brain cells simultaneously. No, there's nothing about multiple types of brain cells. So we're going to have to go with A. In a study of new technology adoption, David Marikian and others examined negative disconfirmation, which occurs when experiences fall short of one's expectations, to determine whether it could lead to positive outcomes for users. Seems counterintuitive. The team focused on established users of smart home technology, which presents inherent utilization challenges but tends to attract users with high expectations, often leading to feelings of dissonance. The researchers found that many users employed cognitive mechanisms to mitigate those feelings, ultimately reversing their initial sense of disappointment, which choice best states the main idea of the text. That people are able to convince themselves that it really wasn't that bad. So let's see what we got here. Research suggests that users with high expectations can feel content even after experiencing negative disconfirmation. That sounds like a good answer. Research suggests that most users of smart home technology will not achieve a feeling of satisfaction. It's not what it said. Although smart home technology is aimed at meeting or exceeding high expectations, these expectations are poorly understood. No, didn't say that. Although negative disconfirmation has often been studied, little is known about, no. Go with A. All right, we have a chart here. REM sleep on land after an extended period in water. I'm going to turn the thing to see what it says here. The vertical axis is REM sleep as a percent of baseline. Okay. And we have 3 seals. B, A, and C. Research suggests that REM sleep in animals is homeostatically regulated. Animals compensate for periods of REM sleep deprivation by increasing subsequent REM sleep. Yeah, I do that. When on land, fur seals get enough REM sleep, but during the weeks they're in the water, they get almost none. In a study of fur seal sleep habits, researchers recorded the REM sleep as a percentage of baseline for fur seals once they had returned to land. They concluded that REM sleep may not be homeostatically regulated in fur seals, citing as evidence the fact that seals in the study, let's look at the possibility, showed no significant differences from one another. Well, that's not true. There are significant differences between the seals. Did not show significantly less REM sleep during the second day. That is not true either. Actually, seal B had a significant drop off on the second day. Didn't consistently demonstrate a significant increase in REM sleep. That's a fair statement. I mean, seal C didn't differ much from the baseline at all. Seal A did, Seal B did on the first day, but not on the second day. So C looks pretty good. Showed no significant difference between REM sleep and, well, see, we didn't measure the REM sleep while in the water, so we can't pick D. So C looks like best choice. In vertical inheritance, parents pass genes to their offspring, but in horizontal transfer, HT, one species, often bacteria, passes genetic material to an unrelated species. Let me check something here. Okay. In a 2022 study, herpetologist Atsushi Kurabayashi and his team investigated HT in multicellular organisms, namely snakes and frogs in Madagascar. The team detected BOVB, a gene transmitted vertically in snakes in many frog species. The apparent direction of gene transfer seems counterintuitive because frogs usually don't survive encounters with snakes. And they would not be able to transmit the newly acquired gene to offspring. But the team concluded that BOVB is indeed transmitted from snakes to frogs, either directly or indirectly via HT, which finding, if true, would most directly support the team's conclusion. Frog species with BOVB, no, it doesn't say anything about snakes there, so let's eliminate A. BOVB can be transmitted across frog species. No, again, nothing about snakes. BOV cannot be reliably transmitted from a snake species to bacteria that are usually... No, that's not good. D, parasites known to feed on species of snakes and frogs in which the BOVB gene occurs also carry BOVB. That seems like the most likely explanation. Is that it is being transmitted via parasites that are in contact with both species. So let's go with D. Optical tweezers are specialized scientific tools, particularly useful in biology and medicine. They use high-powered beams of light to trap and manipulate minuscule particles for study. Use of the tool has led to several scientific and medical breakthroughs over the last few decades, but the particles are often under prolonged exposure to the intense heat of the light beams. To overcome the risk of overheating and thereby damage, researchers sometimes attach nano-sized glass beads to particles, allowing the light to focus on the beads instead of the particles. Based on the text, what is one advantage of attaching glass beads to particles when using optical tweezers? Okay, well, it's because the light and the heat go to the beads, not the particles, so they don't damage the particles. Let's see. It adds a material in which particles can transfer heat. No, the particles are not transferring heat. It decreases the time it takes. No, it doesn't say that. It allows researchers to use weaker light beams. No, it doesn't say that. It facilitates the maneuvering of particles without directly heating the particles. Yes, exactly. Let's go D. Scientists studying Mars long thought that the history of its crust was relatively simple. One reason for this is that geologic and climate data collected by a spacecraft showed that the crust was largely composed of basalt, likely as a result of intense volcanic activity that brought about a magma ocean, which then cooled to form the planet's surface. A study led by Valerie Peyre focused on additional information, further analysis of data collected by the spacecraft, and infrared wavelengths detected from Mars' surface that revealed the presence of surprisingly high concentrations of silica in certain regions on Mars. Since a planetary surface that formed in a mostly basaltic environment would be unlikely to contain large amounts of silica, Peyre concluded that high silica concentrations, blah, 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 crusts of other planets. No, it doesn't say anything about other planets. B, Mars' crust most likely formed as a result of other major geological events. Yeah, that makes sense. C, having a clear understanding, something, how Earth's crust. No, it doesn't say anything about Earth's crust. D, information about silica concentrations collected by the spacecraft is likely more reliable. Well, there's no indication that it's more reliable or why it would be more reliable. So the only answer I think that makes sense is B. Having written the impassioned call to arms letter to the Spanish Americans in 1791, Peruvian intellectual Juan Pablo Viscardo y Guzman is often considered a forerunner for the independence movements in Latin America. But Viscardo's role in history would have remained insignificant were it not for Venezuelan revolutionary Francisco de Miranda, who was handed the unpublished letter after Viscardo's death. Miranda not only helped circulate the letter, but his edits and footnotes to the text position Miranda as a central figure in the text's creation. Which choice best states the main idea of the text? Okay. A guy wrote a letter and then died. The letter fell into the hands of another guy who helped to circulate it, also edited the content, added footnotes, etc. All right, what have we got here? Miranda, that is the second guy, played a crucial role in influencing the content and distribution of Letter to the Spanish Americans. I mean, that is such a perfect summary of the main idea that there really isn't any reason to look at the rest of it. And I'm going to go with A. Okay. Nucleobase concentrations from Murchison meteorite and soil samples in parts per billion. All right, we have a table here. Let's read the text. Employing high-performance liquid chromatography, a process that uses pressurized water to separate material into its component molecules. Astrochemist Yashiro Oba and colleagues analyzed 2 samples of the Murchison meteorite that landed in Australia, as well as soil from the landing zone of the meteorite, to determine the concentrations of various organic molecules by comparing the relative concentrations of types of molecules known as nucleobases. All right, let's go back up here. So nucleobases, that's these things over here in the first column. Nucleobases, the relative concentrations, and those are shown in the table here, sample 1, sample 2, soil sample, the relative concentrations. Let's see, relative concentrations. With the comparing the nucleobases in the Murchison meteorite with those in the soil, the team concluded that there is evidence that the nucleobases in the Murchison meteorite formed in space and are not the result of contamination on Earth. All right. What choice best describes data that supports the conclusion? I didn't mean to check that. Adenine and xanthine were detected in both the meteorite and the soil sample. Well, that's not their conclusion, so, that's not going to help. But let's look at adenine and xanthine. Adenine and xanthine. Adenine is not a good nucleobase for the theory that the soil sample did not contaminate the meteorite, because there's a lot of adenine in the soil. There's a lot more xanthine in the sample 1 than in the soil sample, but I don't think we can go with that one. Isoguanine and hypoxanthine were detected in sample 1, but not in sample 2. No. We don't care about the comparison between sample 1 and sample 2. We care about the comparison between the samples and the soil. Isoguanine and purine were detected in both meteorite samples, but not in the soil sample. Isoguanine and purine. Let's see. Isoguanine and purine. Okay, there wasn't a lot in the meteorite, but there was none in the soil. So that had to have been formed in space. And hypoxanthine and purine were in sample 2 and the soil sample. Hypoxanthine and purine. Hypoxanthine and purine. Yeah. Okay. But really, I think the best one is the isoguanine and purine, which were not detected at all in the soil. So I'm going to go with that. All right. Whoa. Oh my God. 10 out of 10. The confetti is flying. So that is, what is that? Advanced Information and Ideas, Digital SAT, Reading and Writing. Advanced. You can do that, you can do anything. Please feel free to like, subscribe, comment, and see you next time.